Hey guys, this is Jeremy from 70 Productions, and this week I want to tell you guys the equipment to have for your podcast. So I have some ideas for you guys as far as your podcast. Stay till the end because I have a couple of tips as well for how to interact well within the podcast. So some of you guys have asked, what should I have for a podcast? I've gotten about 5 different messages through social media, through emails, about what it is that we could use as far as being able to pull off a really good podcast. Let me first say that you don't need a lot of money, but if you're not willing to invest in this, then maybe you should rethink about wanting to do something like this, because you need to have at least the minimum amount of equipment to be able to pull off something really, really well. Because with audio, it's either good or not good. There really is no in between. And so you can get away with minimal edits. You can get away with hit start, hit stop, throw some audio files on top of it to make it look good or to make it sound good. But if the quality is not there, then it's really not worth doing the podcast. And so using your built-in microphone on your laptop is really not going to cut it for something like this. So make sure that you have the products that you need to be able to get successful. The first thing that you need, and this is really kind of a gimme, is you need a great microphone. I actually use our Yeti. This is the Yeti Blue, and it's a great microphone. You need to make sure that you know how to use it because there are dials on the back, but it's a very simple podcast setup. You talk into one side that looks like a whole microphone, but really it's just the front of this. And you set it up. It looks great, but you don't see it because it's an audio podcast. And it really is great for a one-man show to be able to do something like this. If you're going to do something that's more broad, more people in it, I would recommend the Snowflake because it is able to pick up on a bunch of different people. There's the Snowflake, there's also the Snowball. Snowball is more expensive, it has better production, but really the Snowflake can get you by really, really well. For those of you guys that have church microphones, if you have setups that are already established, I would actually recommend just using your church's microphone and getting a microphone stand, something like this, so you're not sitting there and holding it the whole time, especially if it's a 15-20 minute podcast. But if you have something like this, you can set it on your desk, you can clip it in, it's just a mic stand, and you can be able to have your own podcast that way. So now you're saving money on your microphone by just buying a cheap, heavy weighted at the bottom stand for your actual podcast. The second thing to be able to do with the podcast is to have quality headphones. Now, I say quality headphones because they just need to be able to pick up the sound. It really is headphones are headphones. And the purpose of this is because if you interview anybody, you want to be able to know what the noise level is like. And you could listen to what's going on in your room, but it would be better if you could stick something in your ear, focus on the audio. Now, one recommendation when you're doing this is you don't stick them in both ears because then all you hear is what they're saying. You don't hear your own noise level, and now you're talking really loud. And just be able to adjust for something like that. At the same time, you need to listen to the background noise of what's going on. And so only putting it in one ear actually helps you listen for other noises that are going on while you're listening to them talk. You do have to do a balance because you're listening to them, you're wanting to be able to respond well to them. But at the same time, if you're doing your own audio, to make sure that everything in the background does pick up well. Now, the next thing that you need in this process is a laptop or some kind of a computer that is able to pick up some great audio. Now, the software can be anything. If it's a Mac, use GarageBand. If it's a PC, Audacity is really where you should be at. And it's really nothing fancy. You just do a couple overlays, you trim it down a little bit, you make some cuts for if there's any goof ups. And it's really, really simple process to be able to do something like that. And really that's the basics of what you need. Now, to go beyond something like this, if you're going to be using interviews over the internet, we actually set up Google Plus. And so this is something that we use for everything that we have as far as our interviews. And so if it's one person that we're interviewing, if it's a contributor section where there's multiple people on it, we just use Google Plus Hangouts. Now make sure when you do this, you turn off the video feed because there is latency and video files are huge, try to send over the internet. Whereas if you reduce it just to the audio, the upload speed, the download speed really isn't that big of a deal. Sometimes you'll have hiccups and people will sound like they're robots. But if you can do that without the video, you actually reduce the chance of something like that happening. So I encourage you guys to check that out. Google Plus is a great option, especially if your church pastor wants to be able to interview missionaries across the world. Maybe other church leaders that he has connections with that aren't at your local community. And really use the best approach for you. Now, I said at the end, if you wanted to stay around, I could give you a couple of tips. Here's 2 tips for you guys to be able to set up something to be able to have a great podcast. And it's really how to make the conversation go well. The first one is to not talk over each other, because you have a lot of people talking, and if it gets really confusing, it's really frustrating for the listener. I know I have a couple of church tech podcasts I listen to. They do that. I know with the Church Mac podcast, sometimes we have that, but we really do keep it in check and saying no talking over each other. The second thing is have a moderator that is directing the conversation. It really helps that overlay of people talking. So make sure you have someone that says, okay, what do you think, Tom? How do you think this should be, Jerry? And really you're instantly directing. It's not that awkward pause where you have to make a lot of edits of, oh, I thought he was going to go, or I thought they were going to say something. And so you can actually have a great setup. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say as far as hardware and software for this setup, as well as maybe your own tip that you could have for podcasts. And we'd love to hear what you guys have to say. We'll see you guys next time.